Fantastic. Thank you, BevCam. Welcome to the Beverly School Committee's Finance and Facilities meeting. Today is Tuesday, January 21st, 2025, and we are meeting in a hybrid remote model using a remote meeting application, allowing for remote participation for the public access to the open portions, of which there are none during F&F, of our meeting. BevCam is live streaming this evening. They're not broadcasting because we have a conflict with the city council meeting that's happening this evening as well, but thank you for live streaming us, BevCam. Beginning on June 16th, 2021, with the Chapter 20 Acts of 2021, which were twice extended and now further extended until March 31st, 2025, local government and boards were granted the provisions to, amongst other things, hold meetings remotely by suspending the need for a quorum and the chair to be physically present. These acts ask our body to use technology methods to allow safe public access. As a note, Beverly has prior approval for remote participation of members, although through that permission, a chair and the quorum must be physically present when this act and its extensions expire. Okay, so joining us this evening are members of our school committee, along with various members of the district administration and leadership teams, and we have some student participation. We love that. I do not have any. Oh, I do have a voting member online, so all of our votes this evening will be roll call votes. And so I'm going to go around the room right now. On this committee with me is Dr. Jeffrey Silva.
Here.
Fantastic. Thank you. Online committee member Kim Coelho.
Here.
Fantastic. Thank you, Ms. Coelho. Although it looks like online, but really in person is Director of Operations Aaron Brown.
Here.
Also in person in the room is our Superintendent of Schools, Sue Chirocek.
Here.
Our Director of Finance, Emma Puglisi.
Here.
Oh, I'm going to just one name. You're going to be like Madonna. You just need one name, Emma. Okay. Also in the room, our Director of Building and Grounds, Bob Shiroli.
Here.
Also probably only one name from now on. Our our resident representative, thank you, former school committee chair, Paul Manzo.
Here.
Fantastic, thank you. And running my technology for me in the room, but hiding somewhat, is Miss Abel. Thank you. And online, we have our Director of Opportunity and Access, Dr. Andre Morgan.
Present.
Fantastic, thank you. All right, are you going to introduce, would you like to, do you know who's in the audience? Do you want to introduce the audience?
I think they're going to introduce themselves, but Ms. Ferrara from the high school, our Director of Guidance. You're going to have one title too, Ms. Ferrara. And she'll bring up the students in a little bit and share.
Okay, fantastic. All right, so that said, I'm going to share my screen and we'll take a look at the agenda and we'll start flying through our documents. Again, I wish to apologize. Usually we have a member of City Council here with us. We had to move this meeting to make some more room tomorrow night for a committee of the whole meeting. And I moved it this direction, meaning Tuesday instead of the other direction of Thursday, forgetting that our city council had moved their meeting to Tuesday. So we don't have a city council rep this evening, and I promised I would make it up to them by sending them an executive summary after the meeting finishes. All right, so our first order of business on our agenda, the agenda is on the screen. First order of business is approval of our meeting minutes from our December 11th meeting. I'll huck those on the screen here for a half a second. Ms. Coelho, either online or anybody in the room, does anybody have any comments or corrections to our meeting minutes from December, our December meeting? Kim, I'm looking to see if your hand is raised, but you might need to unmute and just yell at me if I don't see your hand. Okay, I see none. Can I have a motion to accept these meeting minutes as is?
Motion.
Thank you, Dr. Silva.
Second.
Thank you, Mr. Manzo. All right, we're gonna do a roll call vote. Miss Coelho, you're on. Miss Coelho, you're unmuted, so I'll ask you first. We're voting on the meeting minutes.
Sharon. Hey, Mom. Yes. I have to abstain from that vote because according to the meeting minutes, I was absent from that meeting.
Yes, you were absent from that meeting because, again, I had rescheduled it. I apologize. We're on our second in a row, and here's a little foreshadowing for you. Next month's meeting is also going to get rescheduled. We're going to probably push to a Thursday due to yet another conflict. So then 3 strikes and I'm out, and I guess I'll have to retire at that point in time. Okay, thank you, Ms. Coelho. Dr. Silva, we're voting on the meeting minutes.
Yes.
Thank you. Mr. Manzo?
Yes.
Myself, yes. So that passes 3-0 to 1 abstain. Yeah, okay, fine. I will mark that down. Our building and grounds report is the next thing on the agenda, and I'm just opening it on my screen here for half a second. It was in your packet, and we have Mr. Shirley here with us today, although it's not really to talk about this, right? Ms. Brown is really to talk about something else on the agenda. However, Mr. Manzo, I know you love the opportunity to talk to Mr. Shirley. So I will take a half a second to say, do any of my committee members have any questions about the B&G report? Especially given that we have Mr. Shirley in the room.
I'll first repeat my thank you for doing the electrical or the lighting upgrades throughout the buildings. I think that's just awesome that you were able to do all that.
I'd love to take credit, but Arena Keefe at the city was spearheading that. But yes, I'm helping manage the project internally as we install them.
So whichever way it comes to the district, it's great that you're doing that. And then the only other question I had is, so is there anything in particular that MSBA is looking for in their surveys?
Not that we're aware of. I think they're just doing a high-level overview. They're doing this across the Commonwealth.
Okay.
So we had a virtual meeting, gave them all the information they were looking for, and then next week they will be out and we'll be going through all the schools to. I think they want to get their eyes on site to see what each district and school looks like, so they can assess and kind of put into a file of worst to best or wherever you may want to be. So when communities do go forward with a statement of interest, they could look at their list and say, yeah, this school really needs to be renovated or tear down a new build, and then compare it to where other communities are.
Okay.
So I think that's what really the baseline that they're looking for.
Good. Thanks.
It's one of those instances where you don't really want to be the worst, but in order to get the funding from the state, you'd want to be the worst. Or you'd want to be pretty near the bottom.
Yeah, no, I didn't know if they were looking at, say, roofs or boilers or anything in particular that for some reason this is what we're focusing on. They're just doing an overall survey of every school building.
Correct. And I'll make it a point to point out the worst stuff that we have. So maybe make it a little more dire than it is.
All right.
It's like MTSS, but for buildings. I should share, too. I'll share with you, Mr. Manzo. I'm on I'm on a committee at the state level. The Mass DEP is trying to share across all the school districts for whoever attends these meetings how to be more green. And one of the things they're trying to do, they have a policy subcommittee, and they're trying to influence, for instance, MSBA to say, if you're going to fund a new building, you should fund it with dishwashers, for example, instead of saying use disposables. And so that the coordination of those two different departments is incredibly important, because if MSBA isn't going to fund that, if you're not going to fund a set of architecture plans that have room in the kitchen for a dishwasher, then you won't ever be able to achieve the goals that the Mass DEP is putting forth in their kind of policy subdivision. And I say that acknowledging that there's a trade-off in between the disposables and the energy to heat the water to wash dishes. So as well as labor for the people to run the dishwasher. So, yeah, there's a lot of discussion happening, and I just tip my cap to the fact that they're trying to coordinate across departments. And I reported that out at our last OSC meeting. So you guys all, unfortunately, don't get to be in those meetings. So it's a lot of fun. All right. So we don't do anything with our B&G report. We just kind of look at it and we collect questions if, in fact, there are some. Ms. Brown, I'm going to, on our screen now, is your presentation. Oh, yes, Dr. Silva.
with regard to the control board. Can you speak to, do you understand what led to that faulty control board? And is this something that happens infrequently or?
Yeah, it's 25 years old, so
Okay.
it's just time.
Yep.
Right. So we haven't replaced it yet because we're waiting on a second quote.
Yep.
The vendor that we got that quote from, we do have on contract, but we like to just at least get one other quote to make sure they're not sticking it to us.
Okay, good.
Okay, so, Ms. Brown, this is your presentation?
Yep.
And I'm just going to show the agenda one more time. We are heading into kind of all of these items right here, and they're all contained in a lovely little PowerPoint. So I'm going to hand you the microphone.
Okay. When to move forward. So we can move forward a couple of slides. At the beginning of the year, we talked about having different groups come and share different experiences they are having based off the funding from our district. And so tonight we have Ms. Farrar and some amazing students that are going to talk to us about their experiences with the After Dark programs. And so Ms. Farrar might share a little information and the students as well. So we thank you for coming tonight and look forward to hearing all about the different experiences you have.
Thank you so much for having us. Anytime I have an opportunity to come in and speak about some of the programming at the high school for students, it's always so much fun. I could spend a whole hour. I'm not going to take up your meeting. And I want to give my superstar students here who came tonight in support some time just to introduce themselves and to talk a little bit about their experience and why the After Dark program has been beneficial for them. But first, I'll just basically review what our After Dark program model is at Beverly High School. So we have a partnership with two local high schools, Essex Tech and also Salem High School. So for our students in 10th grade, they have an opportunity to sign up to apply to either program, and I'll explain what both programs have to offer our students. And this is essentially the model of the program. So the students who participate spend a half a day at both schools. So in the morning, they're at Beverly High School taking academic courses for 2 blocks each day. And then they are in the afternoon in their shop classes at the corresponding school that they attend. So they participate in this program throughout junior and senior year. So they're in this type of model where they're half-time at Beverly High, half-time at the other school. While they're in their shop classes at their other school, they're actually completing 900 hours towards their certification in their fields. So it's very important time they're spending there. They're in the classroom, but they also have the opportunity to go out and do a co-op. Their senior year especially, and sometimes junior year it begins later for some programs, I believe, but all of that time spent is really towards building the skills they need to be successful in that career, should they choose to go right into the workforce after graduation. They also have the option of applying to colleges and attending college as well, but this gives them another certificate really in their pocket and something to be prepared for beyond a college pathway. So students graduate from Beverly High School, and they also earn that certificate from the After Dark school. And there is typically a nice ceremony held at that school as well, just to honor your hard work and to present you with your certificates. So the application process starts in January each year for the current 10th graders. So for this current 10th grade class, the class of 2027, next Tuesday, actually, we are hosting a presentation during advisory block for the entire 10th grade class. They will all be brought to the auditorium so they can learn a little bit about both programs, and they'll hear from students as well in both programs just to get an idea of what's offered. they'll hear from the corresponding professionals at those two schools as well. So the directors of the programs, and they'll come and do a slideshow for the students and answer questions. And then we typically host a parent informational meeting in February. We don't have a date yet quite set for that, but it mimics essentially what we give to the 10th graders so that the parents can understand all the details about both programs. Then we begin the application process sometime in late February. So students are invited to the library, to the guidance office. We help them fill out their applications, make sure they have everything ready to go. And the interview process starts in March. So staff from Essex Tech comes over to the high school and we set up interviews for every student one-on-one. Salem High has not required an interview process yet, although maybe this year they will. But typically, this is the time frame for the application and interview process. And then in April, usually around April vacation, students learn if they were accepted to the programs. And then in May, we schedule field trips with both schools. So students are taken over to have a tour of the classroom spaces and get a sense of the whole program and what it's like to take the bus midway through the day and head over to the school, and then, you know, what that's like. And then they're brought back to the school in the afternoon or to home. So that's the timeline. And then I have a slide for each program. So I figured maybe what we could do is the next slides, I could just talk about the programs offered at both and then turn it over to the students. So we have some updates on our student speakers. So those names aren't necessarily correct there, but that's okay.
Scroll back down and then they'll be off the screen.
Okay, perfect. Okay, great. So, awesome, trickery. I love that. So, our first program is with Essex Tech, and we have been in partnership with them for After Dark. I think this might be our going into our fifth year. So we started during COVID, actually, which was a little dicey, but this will be our fifth year running through. So we have 4 programs, partnerships with Essex Tech: health assisting, sustainable horticulture, construction craft laborers, and advanced manufacturing. So you can see the numbers next to each program. That's how many students we have enrolled in each program, both juniors and seniors currently this year. And tonight, we have 2 amazing students with us here from the Essex Tech After Dark program, Sophia and Jaira, and I'm going to have them introduce themselves and talk about their program and why it's been beneficial for them.
Yeah, excuse me if I mess up if any time. I'm a bit nervous, but I correspond to the name Sophia. I am a senior this year. I am in the Sustainable Horticulture program, and I think that the programs are very beneficial to us in the sense that we get to learn new skills for us to use in life, and not only that, it gives us a chance to figure out ourselves and figure out something new we like. Like, for example, I never saw myself working with plants, but now I do it and I really like it. I like making bouquets. I like, dealing with anything that has to do with flowers. And if it wasn't for the program, I would have never thought I could do that. So, yeah, I would definitely recommend it for students in the future.
Awesome.
Hi, my name is Jaira Chandler. I'm a senior this year at the After Dark program. I am in health assisting. It has been a very crazy journey from going to Beverly and then Essex Tech for half a day, but I wouldn't change it because it gives you a good experience of the work field and what you will be witnessing, especially if you're going to college for more health assistant learning. That's what I will be doing further in college. So I think this is a good setting ground. And in health assisting, it's very broad. We all start off as CNAs, but then we're able to move to different programs like within the work field. But yeah, I would recommend it to the juniors and upcoming juniors and sophomores because it's a very good experience. You make very good friends, and you guys can succeed together.
Very good. Okay, thank you both very much. Our next program is with Salem High School, and we are in our second year of partnership with Salem High School, and what they offer our students is automotive technology or medical assisting, and you can see there that the automotive technology program is very popular. We currently have 16 students, juniors and seniors, enrolled in that program. And medical assisting, which is a little different than health assisting, 6 students are enrolled in that program. And tonight we have Colby Flynn, who's here with us for in our automotive technology program.
Hi, I'm Colby Flynn. I would like to say thanks for having me. This program has been really beneficial to me. Like, I've been able to learn how to service on my car. I've also acquired like my my 10-hour OSHA card, and then I've made a lot of new friends. Like, I went into this program like with no one really. I only know a few seniors that are in the program that are my nephew, and then like a few friends that kind of got me into it. But I would say that like definitely meeting new people has like changed a lot, like in the school for me. Like, I'd say like just I'm bad.
No,
I
you're
have a
doing
lot of
great.
anxiety.
You're
But,
doing
like,
perfect.
It's changed the school year a lot for me. Last year, like, I didn't like the school too much. I didn't feel like I was benefiting a lot, and being able to go over to Salem and like learn new things, like servicing my car, and like being able to help other people and like work in a shop has like really benefited me a lot, I would like to say. And I would recommend it to other students a lot in the future. And I'd say Tuesday, I'm about to like talk to the other sophomores about this program, and I would like to get more like people in it.
Awesome.
I want to thank you all for being here tonight and coming. I know it's not the easiest, especially on a cold night, cold, dark night. And I said all of you did a great job, but I certainly might need some of them I might need to hire some of them to help me with flower arranging, health assisting at my house, and definitely fixing the car, because my son doesn't have that skill yet, so.
High demand career for sure.
So
Thank you. Thank you for
so
having
much for
us.
coming.
Can we?
Thank you all for
will
coming.
Will you stay for a moment? Will you entertain some questions?
Sure.
Okay, yes, Dr. Silva.
Thank you. Thank you for letting us know your experience. I'm curious to know if, with the Essex Tech students, did you go through a rotation? Did you know where you wanted to land with regard to, a position at the school? Or did you have to sort of experience it initially and then pick a program?
So for our incoming students at Essex Tech into ninth grade, they definitely give them that rotation. It's mandatory. They have to go through the rotation. But for our After Dark program students, they have to pick a shop first. They don't get to experience all of the shops and then make a decision, correct?
Not only that, it's also, as you're filling out that you want to enter the Access Tech, you're giving, at least for us, we were giving at least like 5 or so options. And it was like, it had to do with auto, there was health assisting, sustainable horticulture, and you could pick, right, your main choice. And then if you weren't accepted for that, you could have another one. And that's what happened with me. But I ended up landing in my second choice, and I don't really regret it. So, yeah.
I'm looking around. Oh,
For
oh, sorry.
me, again, like what she said, I was placed into it. Like you could like actually be placed into it. For me, I did in the beginning struggle with health assisting because it's very demanding. There's a lot of studying. There's a lot that you have to do. A lot about the human body, and stuff. And at first, it was very overwhelming. I'm not gonna lie. So I did look at horticulture, but then for me, I realized that I love to help people, and health assisting is more for me. Like it is a lot of work, but if you put your mind to it, you can do it. So I think for me, I don't regret going back into health assisting because it helped me like expand my like traits and skills.
Fantastic. All right, Kim, I'm looking online to see, I don't see your hand up. I'm looking around the room if anybody else has any. Yes, Mr. Renzo?
So for the three of you, you're all seniors, right?
I'm a junior.
You're a junior, okay. Even for the junior in the room, has this experience given you some sort of sense of, okay, what do I want to do next? Because I know I'm 62 and I still don't know what I want to be when I grow up. And so, and so when the people who go to Essex Tech as a 14-year-old, they've made a decision what they want to do, and 16, 17-year-olds, I'm always amazed that people think, oh, I want to do this. And so have you guys figured out either I really want to do something or I don't want to do something based on the experience you had at your vocational programs?
You want to go first?
Yeah. For me, that's a good question. Hold on. For me, like I could say, like I'm very privileged to be on co-op. My job is very family environment. So for me, whenever I have a question, like I could ask my boss, and like ask my coworkers. And one of my coworkers is going to school for occupational therapy, and we talk about it very often. So like for me, I would like to look further into occupational therapy. And even when you first go into the school, the teacher that I had, he asked us, what are you looking to eventually become in like the health assisting field? And the health assisting field is very wide. That's why I love it there. And at first I started with radiology, but then I got the experience of radiology and I realized it wasn't for me. And then obviously at my job, there's occupational therapy, PT, physical therapy. So for me, it like kind of opened my eyes to what I could be doing in the future.
Yeah, in my shop also like made me, apart from learning new experiences, it made me realize more things as in like who I want to be in the future. Maybe I won't be like working with soil or whatever because it's not my favorite part of horticulture, but I do maybe see myself. I signed up, okay, I will be honest, for college, I signed up to be a psychologist, and I found out recently that you could do kind of like a floral type of psychology, I think it was called. I don't even know the real name, but it's like as you talk to a person, you can just keep making little arrangements to kind of ease their mind, get them out of their like mini bubble. So it got me into new stuff I didn't know about, and I'll see if in the future I can get into that.
Love it.
Well, this has like really made it like feel like I can get out of high school with something in my hand. Like I can go be able to like work in a field like with some people that like know what they're doing, and I really like think it's like great because like I could go move into other like fields. Like there's diesel mechanics, and then like there's normal like rotary engines that I can work on. So like I find this like really like great.
Wonderful.
Right, and then a question for you. What do we see in our future for additional programs? I know you're always working to increase the after dark and we're doing our own pathways in district. And so do you see on the horizon any additional external partnerships?
Well, we're always hopeful that both of these programs will open up some other shop opportunities for us. Salem actually has been wonderful with us. They offered for us to have students apply to some other programs last year that they offer. However, it typically comes down to space. So if their shops are already filled up by their own students at their school, then they don't have as much space for us. But I'm sure that, they are looking at that and they're willing to take a peek and see if there's some more room for our students, because the feedback is always that they really enjoy having our students on campus and they love working with our students. And with Salem, we're the only other high school sending students to their school. In fact, the Beverly-Salem partnership is the only comprehensive high school partnership in the state. So we're in, I would like to thank Dr. Chirocek for getting that going. We're the only school that has that with Salem. With Essex Tech, there are some other high schools that participate in After Dark. So we are, I think, the largest number of students enrolled of all the high schools that partner with Essex Tech. So that's nice. So we'll see how the trends go with the schools and what they offer, but we're always trying to create new pathways at the high school and more experiential learning for students, more career immersion, getting them out and in the places that might lead them to a future career. We're always trying to figure out those opportunities. And the REACH program certainly is something for us. That's like our flagship career immersion program at the high school, where students get to go out and get a taste of what there is to do out there, which could spark either the desire to pursue that or be like, I am all set with this. So that's good too, right?
Absolutely. Learning what you don't want to do is just as important as learning what you may want to do. Yes, Dr. Trocek.
So, first of all, I want to thank you guys. You guys did an awesome job, and I really appreciate the work that you're doing, Julie, to get all of this up and running. Usually this is might have been a CISL presentation, but I want to note that we're at F&F. So there's a reason that we're at F&F. Because with one of the challenges that we have as we keep moving forward, and one that I know we'll all work together to try to resolve, is that there's a cost associated with the programming. And when we began 5 years ago with Essex Tech, and then again 2 years ago with Salem, we were eligible for grant opportunities because we were opening. So, grants come for new things, but then it's the sustainability of those programs once you get them up and running. So we utilized grant money to kind of build what we do at Essex Tech over the first few years. Then we got a new grant to build what we do at Salem High School. We, however, unless we get new strands, so we say someone opened a new shop, we could apply for that, like somebody expanded to electrical, so we could apply for the electrical programming and look for grant money for students that go into that. But we need to make sure that when we build the budget, we're budgeting to make sure that we're carrying the differential. So the cost at Essex Tech is $7,500 per student. The cost at Salem is $5,600, and that's just the pricing structures that they have set. So, as I said, we've been utilizing grant money to kind of bridge this opportunity for our students, and so we will continue to build it in. We had money built into last year's budget, a line item, but that number is going to have to go up. And I want to make sure that you all know how valuable the program is as we build the budget. So we keep that in mind, that we make sure this is probably one of the best ways we have right now to offer these opportunities to our students. And I really have seen how invaluable they are. And so I'll stop.
So thank you, because you read my mind and you already answered part of a question that I was going to ask. What about do we take any Salem students? So are we offering, so right now it's as if it's a school choice, and for every sending student, we have to send some money, and we understand that the price to send to North Shore Essex Tech, once an Aggie, always an Aggie, I'm old, man, right? Is higher, and what I just heard, the number for Salem is a little bit higher than school choice.
Right. So no, our Salem, so CTE programs, we're going to go in probably too deep than you wanted to know, but within school finance, CTE programs receive a differential. So everybody has a per pupil number, and then there are differentials that get added. So that incremental increase for students. So there's a certain amount of money that Chapter 70 we get in. So for Colby, we get a certain amount of Chapter 70 money in for him. The fact that he's enrolled in a Chapter 74 program adds more money to the amount of money that we get here. And then that's the difference that we send off to Salem. The problem is it comes in arrears a year later. So it's following Colby a year later than he was actually doing his studies over there. So our job is to kind of make sure that and the grant money was seemingly to bridge folks into that. However, the Chapter 74 money, when it comes comes in just meshed in with all of the Chapter 70 money. So it's not like they say, here's your check to send to Salem. They just say, here's your Chapter 70 allotment. And so for us, it's a matter of making sure that we keep it in the appropriated budget so that we're able to use it for them. And at Essex Tech, the differential doesn't cover. So there's an added cost of about $2,500 per pupil that goes to Essex Tech that we just have to find in our budget beyond what we'll get. But even that money comes a year in arrears because that's just the way the Chapter 70 money works. So that's the piece that is tricky about it, and trying to keep us on track for that.
Dr. Silva?
I'm curious, if there were, like, in terms of the future, is there anything stopping, other than money, stopping Beverly from creating their own trade vote
So
school?
there's nothing stopping us, but it would, the requirements under Chapter 74, like, it would be really challenging to open an auto tech department. We would have to have the space, then you have to have the equipment, then you have to have the on-site visit, and there are certain certifications, and you have to have the staff to be able to run it. So we're not prohibited from doing that, with the one exception that if it's a program that Essex Tech runs, we have to prove that there's not enough seats available. So we're in a contract with Essex Tech.
But given the challenges with there being openings and after dark and
It's all
lack
doable.
of continuity.
It's a very expensive proposition.
Right. So all I'm saying is, if there were money and if there were space and people and Beverly, there's nothing really holding Beverly back from.
Not holding back, as long as that we meet the requirements of DESI and that our contract with Essex Tech shows that we have done due diligence to try. So Salem is separate. There's nothing stopping us from sending kids to Salem. And nothing that in our partnership with
Provided
Salem
that provided that there's an opening.
Yes, but there's nothing in our partnership with Salem that stops us from trying to open our own.
Right.
However, in our contract with Essex Tech, and Paul can help me out with this, I think, we have an agreement with them that we wouldn't compete for students. So they have what is that? The hairdressing.
Cosmetology.
Yeah, cosmetology. Yeah. So say we wanted to open a cosmetology, cycle of our own. We would only be able to do it if we could prove that we've had students that have been applying to Essex Tech that have not been able to get in. Not a problem. Our wait list is super long.
Yeah.
And our numbers that we have applying, and they don't apply for specific schools anyway until later. So the answer is yes and no. There are some requirements we'd have to meet, and then the financial impact is tricky. And it has to be approved by DESI. So we couldn't just open it and run it. We have to apply to DESI. And I believe there's maybe some constrictions within them that how many programs are within a certain area or something like that. I'm not really sure. But we would have to apply for it. We are not a Chapter 74 approved school. We would have to apply for that.
I think that's a fantastic question, though, because, and I apologize, because I said, oh, well, you guys stay for a few questions, and now you're like, in knee deep, right? And you're probably thinking, can we leave now? So I think that's a really good question, because I, for one, often hear, why did we close the patent wing, right? And so I think it's a very valuable thing to revisit. I think people forget kind of where we were and why we made the decisions that we made. And there is something to be said for an economy of scale, and that the pendulum swings, right? And so, I'm a big fan of saying, I'm old. I've been here a while, and when my first child went through school, there was a real push away from the trades and into college. And I would say to you, the pendulum has now swung the other way, but somewhere in between there, we had MSBA money to build a new school, and we had to make a decision, and the decision that we made was to go into this partnership and say we won't compete, and when we build our new school, we won't have a patent wing. So, the physical space, as you know, we talk about any given one of our meetings here, we're up against it relative to space. We're one of the few districts that has rising enrollment. We don't have an extra room sitting around that we could say, hey, we're going to turn this into an automotive room. You might be happy if we did that and people were coming to us instead of sending him on a bus to go across the bridge. So there's always going to be those trade-offs, but I do think it's a valuable conversation to have to remind people. It wasn't like we just decided, automotive is not worth doing anymore, right? There are changes over time. The pendulum swings. We went from, you're going to have to help me with the names, but we're back to science of reading. We went away from phonics. Now we're back to phonics, right? So things in education change, and they change, the more they change, the more they stay the same, or some such thing, right?
Yeah.
So I think that's, I do hear that question a decent amount myself. And so I thank you for that question, because I think it's, we have to remind people, right? We're
I
not
think-
just anti-automotive, for sure.
I think, in terms of the space, the Cummings, there used to be something at the Cummings Center as well, if I remember correctly, and there's plenty of space there. So to think that it's just limited to the high school area, I mean, it's in walking distance to the high school. So
Right. And if you-
there are options that allow for you to sort of think outside the box.
And I think when the last time we had the North Shore Tech Superintendent of Schools as our guest here, my suggestion to her was exactly that. We want more children to be accepted into the electronics program. Can you please open a satellite campus? And guess what? I know I can get you space over at the shoe. Hire somebody and have a satellite campus, because she said she too was up against a space constraint. So,
And the
like-
demand is there for electricians, for carpenters, for
Absolutely.
automotive. So some of these schools that have those programs,
right.
there's
And-
much more demand than they are able to provide. And so if the resources are there, we should think about it in the future.
Yeah, the average age in the trades is in the mid to late 50s, right? So there's a big turnover.
You're bringing the average down.
Well, there's a big,
You personally.
there's a big gap, right? And
Thank you so
A lot
much.
of younger kids are getting in now, but there's a big
Thank
gap.
you.
Run away. So I agree, and I think that it's worth noting that I personally am hoping to see the money from I'm going to just use the layman's term, the millionaire's tax right now is all being directed at state level colleges, right? And that any given child can go to college. If it's their first degree, if it's their undergraduate degree, they get to go for free. You can go to UMass, you can go to North Shore, you can go to wherever, right? I'm hoping that pendulum too swings and some of that money comes down to the high school level, because then we would have money to think about doing some of these things, right? And so, I'm in over my head in policy, and right, I'm hoping to be able to influence some of those things. We are where we are right now, and that money's all being directed at the collegiate level right now. We'll see if we can't swing that pendulum as well.
Thank you very much, Julie. I appreciate you coming tonight and sharing that. They did a great job.
Okay, am I scrolling?
Yes. So the next topic we have tonight is kind of a pest control update and conversation. We thought we would start the conversation tonight, and Mr. Shiroli is with us to help us with that conversation. But out of negotiations and talking with the different units, there was concern about potential pest, the amount of pests mice that we might see in our schools. So one of the first things that we did after that period was we did some just data collection and had a survey out to the entire staff of the district to kind of notify us when and where they have seen mice in particular in the schools. And so you can see here on the graph, generally speaking, they're running in most of our buildings 10 or below sightings in that period of time. So it was 2 weeks before the winter break, and then after winter break until just the end of last week. So you can see generally around 10 or under sightings in the buildings, except for in the high school, which had 28 or 29 sightings in their
And
building.
I think the sightings, though, Aaron, it's not just a live sighting. It's some people saw
Right.
live sightings, some people saw evidence, whether it were fecal matter or if they have food in their desks or in the classrooms, right? Or even if they're found in traps, captured, dead or alive. So that data is kind of all of that encumbered in one big clump.
Yes. And so if you see on the next slide, just some general information about the life cycle of a mouse, such, general field mice that we have, 2 to 4 litters per year, 4 to 6 babies, etc. Female mice can mate within 24 to 48 hours after giving birth, etc. 3 weeks for a baby mouse to start looking like an adult, and generally their lifespan is anywhere from a few months to a year or two. So just kind of some general information, and I give that information because Mr. Shirley and I have talked about, what our current methods of eradication are, our pest control measures in the schools, and I'll let him speak a little bit more about the methods and what's working and what's not working, as well as some of the concerns that we see in the school buildings and how to address those.
Thanks, Ann. Sure. So currently the main source to catch pests or mice right now is traps, whether it's snap traps or glue traps. And it's hard to stay or even get ahead of, as Aaron showed you before, the statistics of the reproductive cycle. So we're catching them here and there, but we're not staying ahead or getting ahead to eradicate them. So with that, right, why do they come up? Because there's food sources everywhere. I don't know if you guys read the article. Methuen went through a big thing where they had at the theater up there, and then also at the schools, they took food out of all the classrooms and said you can only have it in CAFs and break rooms, designated break rooms. Because when there's food everywhere, there's a food source, and that's where, if the mice go to it, they tend to find that. So one of those things we try to educate, we have a PowerPoint we send at the beginning of every year, is how to properly store. If you're going to have food, you should have it in like a sealed container. And sometimes, some staff are great at that and some not so much, right? So that's one of the things is when you have that out there for them, that they tend to attract to that, and they continue going back and then reproducing. Another thing we do try to do on a regular basis is look at all the exterior doors, because, right, where do they typically come in? So we try to look at all the door sweeps, and there's a fine line between keeping pests out and security, making sure the doors close properly. So we're constantly looking at all of the doors, work with the health department, and try to find ways best to keep it at a minimum with what we have to work with right now. We also have Waltham Pest, our pest control. They come in once a month to each school, and they kind of go through the traps, look at areas of concern, and we're working with them constantly on how to improve in these areas.
And I think the conversation, Mr. Shirley and I have had is just how to get ahead of this, and that we're currently maintaining maybe our numbers, maybe they're growing, and hopefully not, but not really being able to get ahead of it. And so what are some ideas about looking towards the future? I know the school committee has had discussions in the past, but just kind of bringing that back, because this was a big issue for the teachers and the paraprofessionals when we were in negotiations, so kind of thinking about and having that discussion again. So one of the things we talked about were bait boxes, and so I wanted Bob to share a little bit with us about what are they, how do they work, and concerns and that the group may have or have heard in the past.
Yeah, so I don't know if you guys have ever seen around most commercial buildings, if you walk on the outside, there's usually large black bait boxes on the exterior, but you could also have smaller ones on the interior. So if you were to just go up to the top of Sawyer Road where the construction's happening and you walk around the fence line, there's going to be big bait boxes about the size of this paper, and that's for larger rodents. But with mice, you also have the opportunity to do the same thing inside. The product that Waltham would use would be a rodenticide, but it has a very low secondhand transmission rate. And the reason to this, it's much different than if you were to go to Home Depot or a big box store and just buy a poison that they have, right? Waltham has a special license where they could buy the special rodenticide. So that's an option that we could think of, right? So the mice go, they eat it. It's got a peanut butter flavor or something. They eat it, and then when they get some water, it activates it, right? So that's how then it'll activate, and it'll eliminate it, or if they go back to the nest, then I'll probably giving too much information, but mice and rats and rodents are cannibals. So then, if there's no other food source, they'll eat that, and then that's how kind of the poison spreads faster. And I probably know too much because I lived it in when I was in my previous position in Wakefield. We had a similar issue in the high school. A lot of mice. COVID fortunately hit. When we were able to eliminate all of them with some time and being able to put the rodenticide out. So I think that's one of our suggestions here is, right, do we start a pilot program with the data we have with the high school having almost triple the amount of number as the other schools over the summer? One of the things we would have to do, right, is if you say you're using a certain product, you need to then send that to families that are going to be in the school. The high school is a well-used building, even in the summer, but much less than during the school year. So these are just some options we have moving forward. I know there's not a lot of appetite for it, but we would just kind of remain the status quo where we are. This is the next step to try to get ahead of it.
And we thought, just one second, Jeff, we thought in doing it, maybe looking at a pilot just with the high school and in the summer, it's certainly fewer students that are in the building versus during the regular year, and just to see if it's a way to kind of get ahead of it, to then, not use it for all the time every month, but to kind of get ahead of where we are and then use our regular methods.
All right, Dr. Silva, before I call on you, I'm going to ask Mr. Shirley, we have somewhere, can you remind everybody, we have an agreement that we won't use poison on, like, for instance, our grass, and why we have that, and if we want to change that, what do we have to do?
So it's a policy that we'd have to put forward and then vote. You guys would have the school committee would have to vote on it to change that policy, I believe. Correct me if I'm wrong.
I also believe that to be true. So I was just trying to.
I know you're trying to lead me on, but I'm not
So
grabbing what you're picking.
because we say that we don't want, for instance, at our elementary schools, we wouldn't want to use a pesticide on the lawn because we know our children are rolling on the grass and then probably doing this. And so then there's pesticide all over them, right? Now, we would hope that at the high school, we have a little bit more control. So I guess in order for us to have this conversation about whether we really want to try this or not, I think that we're going to need a lot more information about what is inside of the bait box, whether there's access to the contents of the bait box, and then when the pest eats whatever's in that bait box and goes out outside, if another animal were to dine on that animal, is it going to poison the bird that's going to try to eat that mouse?
So I think I could answer all those. So they're tamper-proof bait boxes. To get inside them, you would really have to almost do a Gronk spike to smash it, which I think if you can do that, you could break almost anything. Like I said, the rodenticide that they use is you have to have a special license for, and the second-hand transmission is very low with this product versus a big box store. Typically, if we were using it inside, they wouldn't go outside after they consumed it. So I don't think if we're not going to bait box around the building, we're just worried about what's inside already. I don't think we have to worry about the second-hand transmission to other pests outside of the building.
Because it's triggered by water, they're going to be able to get water while they're in our buildings as well.
Correct.
Okay.
There's water everywhere.
All right, I'm sorry, Dr. Silva, it's your turn.
I'm curious if you use these bucket traps. If you've used the bucket traps where you can bait them and it basically just captures them into a bucket.
I have in the past. We haven't here, but it's very similar to the snap traps and the sticky traps. It's just a different method.
My concern with poisons are obviously the rodent getting out into the environment, and maybe it makes its way to the nest, but it may also make its way to a dog or a cat, and affect the pets in the area.
That's what I was trying to ask to some extent, right? So I think that we would want to know, even though you're telling me you don't think that.
No, I would get you hard. This is the
rodent-
this is the product Waltham plans to use, and here's the whatever comes in with it, and the transmission rate and the numbers behind it. Facts.
Right.
Yeah, I could definitely get that.
Even if we say we don't expect the rodent to jailbreak, right? Once they're in, you think they're in, and if they eat this stuff, they came in here, they're gonna end here, right? I guess we maybe want some data on that as well, if possible. And then I will say, relative to the policy questions, that is not one of the policies we have on our little docket here this evening. And part of the reason why, actually, it was Donna did actually select that one, but we say, well, no, we're not going to be ready to look at it because we knew we were going to have this conversation and we knew there were going to be questions. So. Again, a little more foreshadowing. Maybe next month, when we move the meeting to another night, we will have the policy on pest control. Maybe we'll have Bob back, or maybe we'll at least have the answers to the questions we've already posed to Bob.
And I think what we're proposing is not that we're going to be using rodenticide everywhere. I think it's to have the possibility or the accessibility to use it when necessary. Right. So
With a pilot, with a testing at the high school for some period of time where we think the number of students in that high school would be lower than normal,
Yes.
and see if it works.
And
But
generally
I have
for
a question about
for,
that, though.
for a period of time, we were thinking like 4 weeks, to look at what we
Right,
could
but
do.
right now you have the data that we showed on a previous slide is staff reporting, but there's not going to be nearly that many staff in during the summer. So potentially we say, oh, look, there's a way lower number reported, but it got lower reported not because of the bait boxes, but because there's just fewer teachers in the building because it's summertime, right?
Yeah, I think we're hoping
my research methods professor would be very happy that I just said that. I'm going to
I
take
think
this
we'd be
tape and
hoping
send it in for
to
homework.
do it, so it would end close to the beginning of the year, so we kind of get ahead of that fall usual increase.
Look at the reporting after.
Yes. Yeah, when we're back to school. So hopefully in that late July to mid-August range before they came back to school.
Okay, so we'll have to vote on this.
Yeah, so I think
Whole
tonight we were
body
just,
will have to vote on it, right?
Yeah.
I think procedurally, F and F will have to vote on it, and we'll have to send it up to the committee of the whole. So we're in January now, so maybe we can do that in February.
Yeah, we
And the
could-
committee of the whole could see it in March, right? And that gives us some wiggle room before we'd actually want to do it.
yep. And so we just wanted to start the discussion here tonight, so, and hear from everybody. So I think we have good questions we can go back and answer for you for next meeting.
All right, any other, Emma, do you have any questions about mouse patrol? Do you?
I don't like the mice. That's all of it. I am not a friend to the mice.
Yes, Mr. Menzo.
So I think it's fortunate, at least for Beverly, that you've had a similar experience in another district. And hopefully that worked out for you there. Is there a better way of doing, I share Lorinda's concerns about the surveys in relying on maybe not the most rigorous model of monitoring. And so does Waltham, or do you have a different way of assessing what the actual population is? Because part of the problem is that if you don't know what you're starting with, you don't know what success looks like on the other end. And so do they do some sort of survey, or have you done one in your previous employment to figure out, to establish benchmarks and to figure out, what a successful model looks like?
Not necessarily. It's hard to see or know the population in the building, right? Most commercial or industrial buildings have mice. It's just what it is what it is. But a lot of the nests are, and I can say this from the third floor flood, removing millwork. And a few of the classrooms, there was quite large nests behind the millwork that we wouldn't have known they were there until you remove it. Correct.
Yeah.
Yep. Wow. And right, a lot of that has to contribute with what's the food source in the room? So if there's a large food source in the room, mice are going to go to it, and then they're going to be like, let's build a nest right there close to home. We know that there's constantly food for us to thrive.
Unless you're reading Who Moved My Cheese.
So how did it work out your last job? How did, were you able to make any headway in it? Or?
Yeah, we eradicated the mice totally at Wakefield High School. And I mean, it's older high school, right? They're building a new high school because it's in such
Not because of the mice. I hope.
difficult street. Yeah, the mice are eating ceiling tiles and everything. But no, yeah, we were able to eradicate them.
And so what approach did you use there?
We used rodenticide in
you
bait
go.
boxes.
Yeah.
Yeah. I would have conversations quite often with the high school principal there, and she would say, "We need to do something about this." And I would, my first thing was, we need to concentrate the food just to the cafeterias, but it becomes to the social emotional. We need to let kids eat wherever they want, the library, classrooms, whatever. And we kind of went nowhere. It was just catching one here and there. And we actually started the program right before COVID, but then COVID hit, and then they had no other food source except for the rodenticide and the bait boxes. And that kind of, by the time everyone came back, there was no evidence anywhere.
Yes, Mr. Silva, Dr. Silva.
In that example that you just gave, were you able to recover?
Mike, your mic.
In that example you just gave, were you able to recover the bodies or the mice?
Thank you. That was going to be my question too. Like, how do you know?
Some, but then the rest just kind of, they eat it and they decompose, and there's a bad smell for, just like if you had one in your house for maybe 3 to 7 days, and then it just goes away, and they decompose in the walls or the ceilings or wherever they
Any found
choose to.
outside?
And nope. Minus the larger ones that were in the bigger bait boxes outside. No, none from inside that we found out.
Can we go to the next topic
I
yet?
think so. Thank you, Bob. We appreciate it. Thank you for coming tonight and starting our discussion on that, how to eradicate the mice.
Budget chat never sounded so good, did it? We should always follow up nice chat.
Trust me, I don't like talking about it. It's just as much as you guys.
I will say, I don't want us to not talk about it though, right? I understand. I want to recognize that it, like Emma, I'm not a fan of hanging out with mice, and I want to respect the fact that I don't want our teachers, our administrators, our children in a building with them. So, we're going to probably have a lovely conversation amongst the school committee about the trade-offs, because as you said, I've already heard people concerned about, somebody put out poison and then, whatever ate that thing that got poisoned, and then we see the unintended side effects of that. So there's a trade-off there, and we'll definitely have to have some of those conversations. So, but I wish to also honor the people who are in the building with rodents. Not ideal. All right.
Some baby panthers.
Cats are the other option.
A cat visit for the summer?
Put a few cats in the school.
They have emotional support dogs sometimes come, right? Like, get the cats involved. Just because we are in the thick of, or the beginning of budget season, it just felt like it would be a good point to just sort of come in, give you an update where we are. The individual department heads, budget managers, principals have begun working on their budgets, have had meetings with Dr. Trochek, Erin, and myself. So we're starting to get a sense of what the needs are from each of the budget managers. This year, we are also making a very concerted effort to gather some additional information about, we're calling them executive summaries of how our funding is showing up in our schools, how they're helping us achieve, our school goals, and hoping to bring that information into our budget book. And we're, Dr. Trochek and I have taken some time to look at the budget books of some of our neighbors and to giving some thought to how do we maintain what we know, what we love as the existing Beverly budget book, but also acknowledging that we are so much more than just what the numbers in the budget are, and how do we honor that? How do we give context to people who might not know Beverly Public Schools as well as we know Beverly Public Schools? If they were to look at that document, give them some of the confidence and context around, how we're making fiscally responsible decisions about our dollars for our students. And so we're looking at some of those options that might exist. Again, we're still in phase one, but it felt, again, that we're in budget season. This is finance and facilities. It would be remiss to not at least mention it. And my understanding.
I'll annotate the slide for you. We are here.
Yes, and I know that last year around this time, Jean had given a really nice in-depth, discussion about the budget process and budget drivers, and so we know that is a resource available thanks to our good friends at BevCam. Should anybody want to go back and rewatch if there were questions or concerns, but just felt important to sort of bring it to this meeting as well.
Okay. All right, I'm trying to go back. All right, so that's our high level budget overview, and now we're going into items for approval, yes?
Yes.
Okay, so our first item for approval is our December gifts to schools, total of $1,665.69. The bulk of that, Hannah?
All right, no problem.
The bulk of that at Hannah Elementary School, and some amount of that district-wide. I'm looking for a motion to accept with gratitude these gifts to schools.
Motion?
So moved.
Okay, Kim, I'll take your motion. Dr. Silva, I'll take your second. Are there any questions or comments? Any questions on these funds? All right, seeing none, we'll do a roll call. Ms. Coelho?
Yes.
Dr. Silva?
Yes.
Mr. Manzo?
Yes.
Myself, yes, that passes 4-0. Next item on the agenda is budget transfers. Let's go. You know what? I'm gonna close out these other items because they're distracting to me. Gifts to schools, get out. Here's a budget transfer. Budget transfer number. Was there a number?
721.
Puglisi.
721.
Oh, yes, 721. Thank you very much. You circled in everything for me. All right. There's a decent number of pages of budget transfers.
Yes.
Before we can talk about it, let me look for a motion to accept the budget transfer.
So moved.
Thank you, Mr. Manzo. A second.
Second.
Thank you, Ms. Coelho. And now, Ms. Emma, would you like to speak to it?
I would love to. So when the school committee and the superintendent built the budget for this year, we had a lofty sum of $4,950,954 in the reserve for negotiations. And this was to cover negotiations for our Units A, which are our teachers, our Unit C, which was paraprofessionals, Unit B, which is our administrators. Our custodial union was also up for contract renegotiation this year, and our crossing guards formed a union and embarked in their first CBA this year. And so all of that funding for those things was held in this one line. And now that all of those units have settled contracts, we were able to disperse those funds into the budget lines where those salaries have been. So as we had been, moving through and looking at prior, months versions of our expenditure reports, right, we acknowledged that, we were paying salaries out of there that were going to change, and those budget lines were going to change. And so this allocates not just to salary lines, but also to the other items that may have been included in those, in the settled CBAs. So in the increased tuition reimbursement for units A and C also came out of this fund. Increased longevity for some of our unions, and then also an increase to the payroll taxes that correspond to the increased salaries. So that's all within here.
All right, committee members, I'm looking around. Ms. Coelho, do you have any questions about this budget transfer?
No.
Fantastic. In the room, do I have any questions from my esteemed gentlemanly contacts? Yes, Mr.
So
Manzo.
you didn't mention clerical and food service, so are those contracts not up for renewal at this point?
Yes, our AFSME units, their contracts will expire at the end of next year. So next year we will go through renegotiations, and that will be FY '27, where they will start their new CBAs.
And did you manage to get rid of all that money in the reserve for negotiations account?
I did.
And did you need to go somewhere else to find more, or did that pretty much take care of it?
It pretty much took care of it. I mean, we will, continue to look at the concept or the cost of our expended parental leave. That is really one of those costs that it was part of the CBA that we will likely be, as we do have in past years, acknowledge that where there might be some sub-costs that need to move in. We funded it as what we anticipate that will be, but again, that's based on what our average number of leaves of absences have been over the past 3 years. And so as we work through the year, we may see more or less of that.
All right, last call. I'm looking at you, Dr. Silva. Okay, there's a motion and a second on the table. Roll call, Ms. Coelho, do you approve this budget transfer?
Yes.
Dr. Silva?
Yes.
Mr. Manzo?
Yes.
Myself, yes. That passes 4-0. Get it off my screen. Next item is grants. We have one little grant. I love to say, why would we ever say no to free money? For $12,500, multilingual newcomer and homeless support grant. I'm looking for a motion to accept this money.
Motion.
Second.
Second.
I'll write down all three of your names for both of those actions. Thank you. Questions from the committee? Yes, Mr. Manzo.
So what do you do with $12,500 for multilingual and homeless support?
So this is some state funding that is supplemental funding. And so it will continue to support welcoming. The grant initiatives and goals are to welcome and support newcomers and their families to safe and inclusive school environments, provide some additional high-quality instruction, and to help provide meeting emergency or basic needs to these students as they come in. We have had some discussion earlier in the year about our multilingual learner population. Caitlin Beleza joined us, I believe, at our September meeting and shared some about that population. And so this money will continue to support the great work that is being done.
So this isn't the entirety of the money that the district spends on these needs. This is just adding to.
Supplement.
Yes, it is supplemental.
Thank you.
All right, any other questions about this grant? All right, there's a motion on the table. Ms. Coelho?
Yes.
Dr. Silva?
Yes.
Mr. Manzo?
Yes.
Myself, yes, that passes 4-0. Next item on the agenda is a new high school activity account. So a student activity account, there's maybe two parts to this. I'll put on each one on the screen for half a second. Here is the form that Carla Femino filled out to say she wants to have an account to support the youth version of the Rotary Club. And then here is the our little like kind of policy that says every time we add a student activity account, we need to vote on it. So I'm looking for a motion to add the student activity account.
So moved.
Thank you, Ms. Coelho. Can I have a second?
Second.
Thank you, Mr. Manzo. Are there any questions?
Do you want to just briefly describe what the Interact Club does,
Sure.
please?
So it is a service club at the high school with ties to the Rotary, and it's specifically business oriented. So it's a little bit different than the Key Club, which does not have that business component. But it is, I believe it's in its third year. And so really it's community involvement and engagement similar to the Rotary Club.
And I would say if you would like to experience it firsthand, you could have any given Rotary member take you as their guest to a Thursday lunch at the Danforsport Yacht Club. And I believe several members of the school committee are members of the Rotary. and sometimes the students come to Rotary. Sometimes Dr. Trocheck comes to Rotary, and the students come with her. So like, if you're hanging out with Rotarians, if you're, which I believe is just an excuse to go out to lunch once a week and give money away to good causes. And so we're kind of trying to model that behavior for some number of students. Yes, Dr.
If I remember
Trocheck.
correctly, and I'm not sure if it happens annually, they also have a really nice networking event where the high school students come to Danvers-Port, and then there's a lot of community members, and they kind of learn the art of networking. And so students, walk around and meet different folks with different backgrounds and, representing different fields, and they're able to kind of talk and interview them. So I know a few years ago I went to that one, and so there's your real opportunity to see the Interact Club in action.
And the Rotary gives a pretty good scholarship on the Dollars for Scholars Night, and now there's a relatively new scholarship in addition to the standard Rotary scholarship, named after a wonderful human being, Jack Good. So good things happen in the Rotary, and if we can extend that into our high schoolers, that I think would be a wonderful thing. And I will say that I am a member of the Rotary, so I will be abstaining from this vote, but I'll also be inviting you to lunch. You can experience that your own self. Any other questions? All right, there's a vote. There's a motion on the table. Ms. Coelho,
Yes.
Dr. Silva,
Yes.
Mr. Manzo.
Yes.
Myself, I'm abstaining. That passes 3-0 to 1. Okay, thank you. The next thing on our agenda is the summer education teacher rate proposed. And here, I'm going to try to make it a little bigger on the screen. Ms. Brown, would you like to speak to this?
In negotiations, we're looking at the summer rate increasing for teachers, Unit A members to $50 an hour, and paraprofessionals was $30 an hour. So,
And so the current rates are 35 for teachers and nurses, 30 for CODA, and 25 for a paraprofessional. These rates, the CODA is now matching the nurse and the teachers, reflective of the fact that in the new CBA for next fiscal year, they will be moving to the same pay scale as the teachers, the same pay grid as opposed to an appendices schedule. And so these rates would be to support folks paid in our summer program. So our special education extended school year program, if any summer school program at the high school, that would be where these rates would be applicable. And they're in line with, at least for the Unit A positions, the curriculum rate.
However, I want to be clear, these are not union. These are not bargained through the contract. Summer rates are set separately. But we're proposing that we match the summer rates that we have. But we're doing it mostly because we really want to be able to hire people to work in the summer. And
Almost
so-
like our substitute rate.
Right, so this is more, but these do not fall under the contract technically. They're outside of the contract.
Thank you for that clarification. I'm looking at you, Mr. Manzo, because there's a question that I expect in my crystal ball. I expect you to ask a
Do you
question.
want to ask it, or?
No, I
Okay.
just like some things never change, and it gives me great comfort to know that.
Yeah, it's comfort food, yeah. So is there money in the budget to support these changes?
Well, these would be effective for this summer, and so it will be in the budget that we put forth. We will make sure that it is reflective. However, that being said, I would anticipate that the budgets that exist, were existed this year for the summer program for extended summer school, would be able to continue to support these rates as well, especially for our extended summer school special education program. Being able to attract staff to want to work over the summer is critical because it helps keep kids with us. Otherwise, we wind up with summer tuitions to places like the RAC and things like that. So,
All right, I should have started with this. Can I have a motion? Can I have a motion to
Motion.
potentially accept this summer rate? Thank you, Dr. Silva.
Second.
Thank you, Ms. Coelho. All right, now that I did that out of order, are there any other questions from the committee on this item? Yes, Dr. Silva.
What's the total cost?
I do not have our staffing yet. It will depend on what the need is.
Roughly.
Roughly, I believe our summer program for special education last summer was in the neighborhood of $120,000. And I believe our high school summer program was in the neighborhood of $30,000 to $50,000.
Okay. Thank you.
So we would do the math times the
Yep.
rate change.
Yep.
Okay, any other questions? All right, there's a motion on the table. Roll call, Ms. Coelho,
Yes.
Dr. Silva,
Yes.
Mr. Manzo.
Yes.
Myself, yes, that passes 4-0. Next item are the policies. And I'm going to apologize profusely because I sent these out to you guys really late. Yeah, Donna, God bless her, she tried to help me. I didn't let her help me enough. So each of these policies is in front of us because we have this rotating, we have a policy that will review all of our policies every 5 years. And so these are coming to us because they just got plucked out of, like, it's time for this one to get reviewed. There has to be some randomness there. And or a policy could come to us because MASC says, oh, here's a change that y'all have to make. So none of these, and we have 5, none of them are sent to us from MASC. Rather, they're all in our own little policy review process. And so that was part of the lack of urgency around getting them out. And then really it was just I didn't realize that I hadn't sent them. So I apologize for that. If, in fact, anybody on the committee wants more time to look at them before we vote on them, to send them forward to the committee of the whole, I will 1,000% respect that, and we'll just bring the same set forward in a month from now, where I'm going to foreshadow and remind y'all that we're probably moving next month's meeting to a Thursday night instead of its whatever this Wednesday night is that it's currently posted. So I'll just put that on the table and ask, like, kind of right up front, does anybody want to push these off until next month, given that you haven't even had much of a chance, if any of a chance, to look at them?
I've had the chance to look at them, and they're pretty general policies that I don't think
Kind
require
of
a lot of
boring.
debate.
You could use that term if you really want.
So I'm
Can I ask?
perfectly happy to vote on them.
Can I ask, have there been any changes made to these 5 policies?
No, that's what I was trying to say about they're just coming to us because it's time to review them. So if we want to wait until next month, you could read them more thoroughly and say, oh, you want to make a change to them. Because as you know, that's kind of our process. That's what we get to do when we get a policy in front of us. But there have been no changes mandated by MASC, and I didn't feel the need to make any changes to any of these.
And my second question would be, does the administration see a need for changes to any of these policies?
No.
So I'm
I
good.
kind of double down on that and say we did potentially see a need to change the pest policy, and the pest policy was on our list for tonight, and so we pulled it off the list because we're like, oh yeah, we need some more time to look at that one. Another little foreshadowing thing is we're probably going to bring forward in the next month or two the building rental policy, and as you know, that's a pretty hefty thing, and it's attachments, and we're gonna have to have a pretty good conversation about that particular one. So that's not this month either,
I'm good with, I'll make a motion to approve these 5 policies.
as
Can I do
is,
that? As
as
yeah.
presented.
Second.
Second.
Okay, fantastic, thank you. Any questions, comments, suggested amendments? Ms. Coelho, I saw you unmute for a minute. You just.
Oh, I unmuted to second, and then I was just waiting to approve.
Okay, thank you. All right, seeing none, we'll roll call. Ms. Coelho,
Yes.
Dr. Silva,
Yes.
Mr. Manzo.
Yes.
Myself, yes, that passes. All five of these policies pass to move forward to the committee of the whole as is for a first reading. Okay, fantastic. We come back to, look at that nice screensaver. Ooh. That happens randomly. That is the wrong button. Hold, please. Okay, here, our next item on the agenda, we've gotten through all of these voting things, thank you, people, is a budget review, our revenues, and then our expenses. Miss Emma, would you like to take the mic?
Sure. There have been no substantial changes to the school revenue report as far as anticipated funds available to fund the FY25 budget in any of these funds. So other than, continued collections, I don't have much to say if there are no questions in regards to the revenue report.
Okay, I'm looking around the room. Does anybody have any questions on the revenues? All right, seeing none, I'll pick the next tab. We'll go to expenses.
Yes, and so our expenses, really the big highlight here is that the reserve for negotiations has been dispersed into the appropriate lines, and as well as we have, once we had final salaries for all of our units, also then made sure that our grants have been properly allocated and revolving funds of salaries that are funded from those places. And so there have been a few budgets, especially at the middle school, where where they have some Title I salaries, where the budget lines looked a little bit out of whack because those salaries hadn't actually been moved into the grants yet. That has all been corrected in this as well. So there's just some housekeeping items that you see reflected there. Otherwise, at this point in time, there are no lines that are of abundant concern. We are pretty much on good pace for our spending, where we anticipate to be our salary lines, where we anticipate them to be, given where we are in the year. So for our year-round staff, we're about a little bit over 50% of the way through the year. I think we're at like 55.8. And for our school year staff, our teachers, because they defer and have that balloon check in June that carries them through the summer, we're about 38% of the way spent in those lines. And so those lines are sort of shaking out into the right places. We're keeping eyes on overtime accounts just to make sure that we're in a good place. But there is nothing that we are, that I am concerned about at this point in time.
Okay, I'm looking around the room. Does anybody have any questions for Miss Emma on the expense side of the house? Yes, Dr. Silva.
So skimming down this, I do see that there's many budget lines that are in the 80s to 90s. You say these are not concerning because you've already budgeted for that?
Yes, and so a lot of those lines that are in the 80s, those are likely like supply lines. We do a lot of our supply ordering up front at the beginning of the year, and then it's not so much paced through the year. We do a lot of upfront ordering, especially for things around curriculum supplies, classroom supplies, office supplies, and then we have much smaller, just sort of like maintenance purchases throughout the budget year. There is one line in here that's actually relevant to tonight that is in deficit, and that is the line, or is in this report in deficit, which is our the line that we use to fund our CTE programs, and that's because we're waiting on a grant, but we had some invoices that were due, so we did move forward with those encumbrances. We have an application in for a grant that we received last year, and that we are hopeful and optimistic about. We have not heard yet, but that is one line. So you would see that in here just because of the timing of making sure that we remain good partners to our partner schools.
All right, so I call on myself, and I have put up page 6, not very far in, that our B&G system-wide, we've overspent, and I'm nervous because I don't want to say, I don't want to jinx us and say the words that I don't want to say, that, Dr. Trocheck doesn't want to say either. But it is winter time, and it concerns me that this line item, and it wasn't a very big line item to start with, right? But the system-wide building and grounds overtime, like that particular line, I highlighted it on the screen.
Yes, so
is
that-
is already overspent, even though the line a couple down lower from it still has money in it.
So that line specifically is our summer overtime, and it is currently overspent because we have a First Jobs program with the City of Salem. And so we have some students who do work through the First Jobs program, and we get reimbursed through the First Jobs program, and we're waiting on our final disbursement.
Oh, cool.
Yes.
That's very cool.
So I do not anticipate that line will maintain in a deficit.
All right, excellent. And we'll hope that the line 3 lines down from that doesn't get touched either.
Yes.
Okay. I'm moving off that page so we don't even look at those words anymore. All right, do I see any other questions? All right, anybody have anything else? We are now, that was the last item on our agenda, and I want to thank everybody for accommodating this new day. And now we've run over by a little bit, and I thank BevCam for coming here and live streaming on a unusual day and time. Well, the time was normal, but anybody have anything else? All right, looking for a motion to adjourn.
Motion?
Second.
Thank you, Dr. Silva. Thank you, Mr. Manzo. That is non-debatable, but still requires a roll call vote. Ms. Coelho?
Yes.
Dr.
Yes.
Silva? Mr. Manzo?
Yes.
Myself, that passes 4-0. Thank you, everybody. Thank you, Ms. Abel, for running my technology for me. Thanks again, BevCam.